In a decisive duel amidst the pouring rain, two figures face off. One, a man with determined black hair, and the other, a white-haired noble named Weiss Vincent, who smirks with arrogance. Weiss is confident, telling his opponent, a mere commoner, that the losing flag has been waving for him from the very start. As the battle is declared to begin, a spectator urges someone named Lilith to watch closely as the fool who defied him, Weissama, is about to be humiliated. With a cry to do his best, Weiss lunges forward to attack. But the battle ends in an instant. Weiss lies defeated on the cold, wet ground, his sword broken. The black-haired man walks away without a second glance as onlookers cry out Weiss's name in disbelief. The defeated man is Weiss Vincent, commonly known as the villainous noble. However, this entire scene was just part of a video game. In a room somewhere, a young man stares at his computer screen, having just defeated the character Weiss. He reflects that in the game's story, Weiss lost everything from that point on. In the end, the character Weiss was used as a shield by the Demon King and died. And then, in the real world, the player who was controlling the game suddenly collapses and dies himself. The scene changes to a large, imposing mansion. The title of the story is revealed. Chapter 1. Wait, I've become the villainous noble. The man who died wakes up with a gasp, finding himself in a dark and unfamiliar hallway, breathing heavily in a panic. He looks down to a horrifying sight. A young maid is kneeling before him in terror, and in his hand is a whip, suggesting he was in the middle of tormenting her. His eyes widen in shock and confusion as he sees the maid tied up on the floor. He can't comprehend the situation he has found himself in. His mind goes completely blank, able to form only a single bewildered thought. H-U-H. He mentally screams, questioning where he is and what on earth is happening. The image of him looming over the maid flashes in his mind, adding to his frantic confusion. He tries to make sense of it all. He remembers playing a game just a moment ago, but now he's in a lavish room with a woman tied up in a degrading position right in front of him. The maid, a beautiful girl with reddish-brown hair, looks up at him with a blush and asks, "Why, Sama? What's wrong?" He, in turn, is internally shocked by how incredibly pretty she is. Hearing himself being called Weiss, a flicker of recognition sparks in his mind. He feels like he's seen this girl before, though he can't quite place her. Suddenly, the horrifying truth crashes down on him. With trembling hands and a look of sheer terror, he realizes, wait, could it be that I have become the villainous and abusive noble Weiss? He stumbles back, his mind racing as he looks around the room, the reality of his reincarnation into his game's villain sinking in. He remembers the game he was just playing, Noblesse Oblige, a school fantasy game that he had poured countless hours into and cleared multiple times. He recalls the lore perfectly. Weiss is the villainous noble who serves as a major antagonist to the game's protagonist, Alan, during the school arc. The character of Weiss was known for being the lowest kind of scum, using his position and power to relentlessly torment those weaker than him. And he remembers the character's pathetic end. After being thoroughly defeated by the hero, Weiss lost everything, became a servant of the Demon King, and was ultimately used as a shield and died. Putting the pieces together, he looks at the tied-up maid and has another realization. This must be Lilith Scarlet, a girl who, according to the game's story, the original Weiss had a hobby of tormenting. Now, inhabiting Weiss's body, he is filled with disgust for the character's past actions, crying out in his mind, "What a horrible bastard! Why would you do something like that?" His immediate thought is to untie the poor girl. However, he hesitates, wondering if such a sudden change in his behavior would make Lilith suspicious. He knows he can't just leave her like this, but a sudden change of heart would be too suspicious. Struggling with what to do, he awkwardly announces a temporary stop, telling her, "Well, I think I'll stop here for today." He approaches the poor, trembling girl and notices a mark on her neck, filling him with pity. He feels he must do something. Then, an idea strikes him, a memory from the game that might just be the solution. Remembering a hidden trick from the game, Weiss holds his hands out towards the startled Lilith and casts a spell. Heal. A warm glow envelopes Lilith's neck, and the marks from the whip vanish. He did it. He internally celebrates, glad that he remembered this hidden healing magic that was exposed in a strategy book for the game. Trying not to act too out of character, Weiss crosses his arms and puts on a tsundere-like facade. "You don't get the wrong idea," he stammers. I just wanted to practice healing magic. It's not like I did it for you or anything." Lilith, however, is overwhelmed with emotion. With tears of joy streaming down her face, she clasps her hands together and thanks him profusely. "Weiss-sama, thank you very much." This leaves Weiss utterly speechless. Lilith continues to thank him, saying she didn't know he could use healing magic. Weiss is bewildered. He realizes that even though her suffering was the original Weiss's fault, she is thanking him. He wonders just how terribly the old Weiss must have pushed her for her to become this obedient. Looking at Lilith, Weiss's guilt intensifies. He calls out her name and, with a look of sincere remorse, he apologizes. "I'm sorry for everything up until now. I won't do it anymore." Lilith is left completely stunned and speechless by her master's sudden, heartfelt apology. Later, Weiss is seated alone at a long dining table in a vast, empty hall. Lilith stands by the wall while the butler serves his meal. The butler of the Vincent family, Zevis Arden, serves the food with trembling hands. He is terrified, as he recalls that usually his young master would just say the food tastes bad and throw the plate on the floor. But the new Weiss is different. He looks at Zevis and admits, "I've been wrong until now, treating food carelessly." He then adds, "The seasoning was perfect today, too." Zevis is struck speechless, his eyes wide with disbelief at the unexpected praise. Overcome with emotion, the old butler bursts into tears of joy. "Such gracious words. I am extremely honored," he exclaims. It's not just the butler. All the maids are crying tears of happiness, exclaiming how wonderful Weiss-sama is. Weiss is baffled by their extreme reaction to a simple compliment about a meal, but he realizes they are so moved that they don't even suspect he's a completely different person inside. This over-the-top reaction makes him truly understand just how horribly the old Weiss must have treated everyone in the mansion. With newfound determination, Weiss decides that from now on, he will make sure not to make these poor girls sad. His first act is to dispose of the whip the old Weiss used for his abuse. Lilith watches him with a gentle smile. He walks outside, sword in hand, filled with a powerful resolve. "I must change even more," he declares to himself. He knows he's on a deadline. As a noble, he is obligated to attend a good academy at the age of 15, and the entrance exam is just 2 years away. He recalls that it's at the academy where Weiss's reputation begins to plummet after he loses to the protagonist in a combat test. A spark of hope ignites within him. If he had not lost to the protagonist there, perhaps the future might have changed. Realizing this, he knows he has no choice but to go for it. With a look of fierce determination, Weiss vows to himself that even if it takes all his strength, he will avoid the path to ruin. And so, his grueling training begins. The panel shows him drenched in sweat, completely exhausted. As he sits on a tree stump trying to catch his breath, he is startled by a voice calling his name. A woman with reddish-brown hair and an imposing aura stands before him. She is Milk A. Vitas, an S-rank adventurer. "Are you even taking this seriously?" she asks condescendingly. Barely able to move, Weiss pleads for a little break. Milk says she sees his exhaustion and tells him to take a proper rest. Then, with a sharp, intimidating glare, she adds, "That is, if you want to be called a loser right after enrolling." In his desperate bid to change his fate, he had used his family's connections to hire this amazing person as his teacher. As she brutally corrects his form, he grimaces, realizing just what a hellish commitment he's made. He knows exactly who she is from the game. This is Milk A. Vitas, a legendary figure who originally appears near the end of the story and is considered the strongest swordsman in the royal capital. He's managed to hire a final boss level character as his personal trainer. He recalls telling her to forget he's a noble and to train him without any mercy. He realizes his mistake now. She's not just a tough teacher, she's extremely sadistic and scary. During his training, Lilith brings him a requested item, a headband. As she ties it around his forehead, he asks her what the writing on it means. She tells him it's the character for diligence. With a new fire in his eyes, Weiss declares, "I will do my best to the point of dying." Milk watches on, seemingly unimpressed. The story reminds us of the game he came from, Noblesse Oblige, which is referred to as a death game. It's a super high difficulty game that you can only clear by repeatedly playing it over and over. Weiss knows that he has never properly trained his body, not even in his past life. However, he also knows that if he neglects his preparation, it will result in immediate expulsion or even death. Not a single second can be wasted. He admits to himself that improving his basic physical fitness is crucial for learning swordsmanship and magic efficiently. But honestly, it's incredibly exhausting. And so begins his hellish training montage. He starts the day by practicing sword forms, then moves on to intense muscle training, and after that he runs endlessly to improve his stamina. He pushes his body to the absolute limit, repeating the grueling exercises from morning till night, over and over and over again. 2 weeks into the training, Zevis serves him a meal. Weiss understands that while recovery magic can heal injuries, a proper diet is essential for training the body. As instructed, Zevis has prepared a menu packed with protein. Weiss apologizes for being a burden. Weiss reflects that it's thanks to Zevis providing all sorts of support that he can somehow manage to push himself even a bit into overwork. The butler looks on with quiet determination. 3 weeks have passed since the brutal training began. Weiss is drenched in sweat, but his eyes show his unwavering resolve. The training was so hellish that every single day felt like a month. Lost in his efforts, he doesn't even notice that the sun has already set. Now that he's finally getting used to the physical training, Weiss decides to call for a magic teacher. He complains to Zevis that he's getting tired of Milk Sensei's strict training and hopes the magic teacher will be kind. He wonders what kind of teacher will show up. Just then, a mysterious figure in a cloak and a witch's hat appears at the door, introducing themselves with a polite "nice to meet you, Weiss-kun." To his absolute horror, the magic teacher removes her hat to reveal that it's none other than Milk Avitus. Weiss collapses to the floor in sheer despair, screaming, "Not you again!" Milk calmly states that she is a master of not only swordsmanship, but also of magic. Zevis proudly explains that Milk is a genius who can use 2 of the 4 great magic attributes. Weiss looks at his butler in betrayal, whining, "Hey, Zevis, I told you to call a kind teacher." Milk smirks, "Huh? Did you hear that? Do you want me to be gentle?" Her sadistic aura terrifies Weiss. However, she then surprisingly agrees to teach him magic gently, and for a moment, he is overjoyed. But her idea of gentle training is to have him stand barefoot under the full force of a raging waterfall. She yells at him to not close his eyes and to channel more magic power as he screams in agony. As Weiss is pummeled by the water, he screams, "Where the hell is your kindness? Isn't this even tougher than the sword training?" Milk coolly watches from the side and tells him to keep it up for another 2 hours. Milk explains the harsh reality to him. To use magic, you need mana. And the only way to increase your mana capacity is through consistent, grueling training. Her instructions are simple and brutal. Repeat this every day until you pass out. Weiss collapses into the water, utterly defeated, crying out "No way," as Lilith runs to help him. But even after collapsing, his spirit isn't broken. With sheer willpower, he pushes himself up from the water, determined to continue his training. Alongside his hellish mana training, practical combat training with wooden swords also began. Naturally, he is no match for the S-rank adventurer. Milk effortlessly strikes him down, taunting him, "You're still full of openings, huh?" As Weiss collapses in pain, Lilith immediately rushes to his side to cast her healing magic. Milk smirks, commenting that she's found a good punching bag. Lilith encourages Weiss to do his best, promising her full support with healing magic. A grateful Weiss thanks her, knowing her help is invaluable. After 2 months of relentless training, Weiss pauses to catch his breath, covered in dirt and sweat. But amidst the exhaustion, he finds himself thinking, but it's strange. He wonders, why is someone as lazy as me able to work so hard? He pushes himself through the waterfall training and grueling runs, driven by a motivation he never had before. He flashes back to his past life, where he was a living corpse. He was a shut-in who immediately ran away from things he had to face. He always gave up and surrendered without a fight. He desperately questions what the difference is between his past life and now. How is it that he, who is so lazy, can work so diligently now? He looks at the scene of his training, with Lilith watching over him. 2 months have passed since the training began. Weiss's physique has noticeably improved, becoming more toned and muscular as he takes a brief rest. Suddenly, he's startled by a hand gently patting his head. It's his teacher, Milk. For the first time, he sees her with a gentle, genuine smile. She praises him. You achieved it in 2 hours. That's quite an improvement. Weiss is flustered by the unexpected gentleness. Is this what Sensei meant by teaching me gently? He wonders. Milk confirms it. That's right. Every time you achieve a goal, I'll reward you with a pat. Weiss sweat drops, thinking to himself that in her carrot and stick approach, the ratio of carrot to stick seems incredibly off. However, Milk seems to read his mind. With a dark, menacing smile, she leans in and says, That's not true, Weiss. Her sudden change in demeanor terrifies Lilith, who is watching from afar. Just then, a cheerful voice calls out to him. It's Lilith, who has brought him a lunch basket, looking like an angel of salvation. Milk turns her head and smiles as Lilith approaches, acknowledging her role in the training. Milk tells Weiss, Don't forget the existence of the carrot roll that supports you, so you can do your best. As he looks at Lilith, Milk, and thinks of Zevis, a profound realization dawns on him. I see. The reason I could do my best. It's all thanks to everyone. He thinks of the people supporting him. Zevis, who helps him with his meals, and Lilith, who always stays by his side. And even Milk Sensei, who though harsh, toughens her heart for his growth. He finally understands that without everyone's cooperation, he wouldn't have been able to get this far. He reflects on his 2 past selves, the lazy person from his previous life and the selfish, villainous noble he was reincarnated as. They only thought about themselves. Because they were so selfish, no one supported them, and no one scolded them. He realizes that what he really needed all along was this mix of love, both sweet and harsh. With a newfound, steely resolve shining in his eyes, he makes a powerful declaration. Then I will no longer live just for myself. He admits that until now, his goal has been a selfish one. He just didn't want to die or be ruined. But from now on, his goal is different. He wants to show everyone his impressive self and ensure that Lilith and the others who have helped him are never sad. Standing tall and confident between Lilith and Milk, he makes his ultimate vow. For myself, and for everyone, I will avoid the path of destruction. The story begins with a close-up on the face of a young man, Weiss Vincent. He's in anguish, covered in sweat under the moonlight, a testament to the grueling training he's enduring. The training is relentless. Weiss pushes his body to the absolute limit, running until he collapses, only to pick himself up and keep going. His goal is to survive for 4 hours straight, a seemingly impossible task that he must conquer. This is the story of a man reincarnated as a lazy and villainous noble. Here, his maid, Lilith, sits gracefully on a bed, a gentle smile on her face. The scene shifts to a wide view of a medieval town built on the edge of a cliffside, with a sturdy stone bridge serving as the main entrance. Now dressed in fine clothes, Weiss walks through the town, flanked by 2 beautiful women. He questions if this is some kind of dream date, completely unaware of the leering thugs watching them from the side. Weiss recognizes this place from the game he was reincarnated from. It's League Belt Town, the first town the protagonist arrives at. Knowing what's to come, he curses inwardly, feeling like the game is cheating. As expected, thugs try to intimidate them. Weiss remarks to his companion, Milk Sensei, that the town's security is as bad as he remembers from the game. Weiss turns to Milk Sensei and calmly asks, "Who is my opponent?" It has been 3 months since Weiss began his intense training. Now, he's been assigned a practical test here in this very city, a real combat situation against actual thugs. Milk Sensei turns to him with a devilish grin, and a horrifying realization dawns on Weiss. She's the one who set this up. Milk explains that she's picking the best opponent for him, while Lilith cheers him on enthusiastically. Weiss, however, is filled with dread, realizing he can't feel at ease at all. From a distance, a group of ruffians watches them, commenting on the attractive women in Weiss's company. Lilith seems to warn the thugs, telling them they'd better watch their mouths, because Milk Sensei will literally kill them. Meanwhile, another thug remarks on how cocky Weiss seems, walking around with a beautiful woman. Weiss observes the town's rough atmosphere, confirming his knowledge from the game that League Belt Town is considered the worst, a den of thugs. Seeing the annoying thugs, Weiss clenches his fist, determined to protect Lilith and Milk Sensei at all costs. But Milk simply tells Lilith to ignore them, calling them not worth their time, which confuses Weiss. Lilith cheerfully agrees with Milk Sensei, her happy demeanor a stark contrast to the tense situation. For a fleeting moment, Weiss feels an incredible killing intent radiating from the smiling Lilith, making him wonder if it was just his imagination. The group arrives at their destination, the local Adventurers Guild, a hub for mercenaries and fighters. A close-up reveals the faces of 3 particularly nasty-looking thugs, their expressions full of menace. Inside the guild, the same 3 thugs corner Weiss, aggressively telling him to step outside. Weiss's heart sinks as he recognizes them. These are the Boudin brothers, the very opponents Milk Sensei has chosen for his test. Lilith explains the situation to Weiss. The Boudin brothers are extreme criminals, guilty of everything from robbery to murder, who have avoided justice by bribing the military police. With the corrupt police now arrested, the brothers are the perfect opponents for Weiss's first real battle. The scene flashes to Milk Sensei, speaking to a tearful Weiss. She's likely reminding him of the harsh realities of their world. Milk acknowledges his strong determination, but points out his critical weakness. He has no real combat experience. She explains that facing a real battle is a path he must eventually walk down. This test is a crucial first step. Milk warns that if he misses this chance, she can't guarantee she'll be there to watch over him in the next real fight. After all, many have died simply from a lack of experience, and she intends for him to survive. Milk Sensei offers a final piece of encouragement, a reassuring smile on her face. She tells Weiss that for now, she's with him and will help if things get dangerous, urging him to go into his first real combat with confidence. Weiss, naively, feels reassured by her words. The moment they step outside, Weiss is grabbed by the Boudin brothers. He looks around in a panic, only to find that his teacher has vanished. He screams in terror and betrayal. "Where the hell did you go, Milk?" The grim reality sets in. That damn teacher tricked him. She and Lilith have completely disappeared. As the thugs drag him toward an alley, Weiss realizes he picked this fight because he thought she had his back. Panic gives way to resolve. Weiss knows what he has to do. There's no way he can back down now, just because he's scared. He has no choice but to brace himself for the fight to come. He steels himself, recalling Milk Sensei's brutal objective for him, to cut off one of their arms. He knows it's a 3 versus 1 fight against skilled opponents, and he's not even sure he can win in a fair fight. Killing them isn't necessary, but victory is. Weiss understands that once he's dragged into that alley, the fight will start whether he likes it or not. He needs to come up with a plan before they get there, thinking back to his training. He remembers Milk Sensei's words, her voice echoing in his mind. She told him to follow what she taught him, and he would be fine. He just has to remember the lessons learned through all that pain and suffering. Meanwhile, from the comfort of a nearby cafe, Milk and Lilith watch the scene unfold. Lilith calls her teacher cruel for deceiving Weiss, but Milk nonchalantly explains that without a little push, he wouldn't get motivated enough. Lilith expresses her concern, but Milk taking a sip of her drink, dismisses it. She argues that it isn't really practice if the student assumes someone will come to help. She casually adds that she'll probably go and help if things get really dangerous. Back in the alley, the situation takes an unexpected turn. Lilith appears, and one of the thugs recognizes her as the girl from earlier. The thugs are delighted by this development, seeing it as perfect timing. They surround her, commenting on how beautiful she is. The leader of the thugs reveals their true nature. They're a band of thieves who run things in the area, and they were just short on girls to hang out with tonight. The scene is grim, with other captured women tied up in the background. Suddenly, a hand taps one of the preoccupied thugs on the shoulder, a silent, ominous gesture that goes unnoticed by the others. Before the thug can even process what's happening, he's struck with incredible force, letting out a scream as he's sent flying. The other thugs are caught completely by surprise. The attacker is Weiss. No longer hesitant or afraid, he moves with a newfound purpose and speed, his sword at the ready. A single thought commands him, "Move first, Weiss." He recalls one of Milk Sensei's most insane lessons, where she burst through the bathroom wall while he was on the toilet just to drill a point into his head. The most important thing in battle is to catch the opponent off guard. The lesson continues with another brutal example. Even a master of martial arts or magic will die if they're hit before they can brace themselves or prepare a barrier. The first strike is everything. The core of her teaching was simple: move before your opponent does. Putting the lesson into practice, Weiss lunges forward, not with his sword, but with his body, sweeping the leg of one of the thugs. He continues his fluid assault, following the trip with a powerful kick that connects squarely with the second thug's face. In this moment of life-or-death combat, Weiss reflects on his past self. He's always been someone who put off making decisions, leaving things for another day. His old mentality was to just let things slide, thinking that tomorrow's me would somehow figure it out and handle it. But he understands now that time won't solve anything. If something needs to be done, it needs to be done now. He decides that from this moment on, he will make his decisions in seconds, punctuating his resolve by swiftly neutralizing all three thugs. With fierce determination in his eyes, he declares his transformation. He is going to change, casting off the lazy, indecisive version of himself for good as he lunges for the final blow. And just like that, it's over. Weiss stands panting, a sense of relief washing over him as he looks at the defeated Boudin brothers. He survived his first real battle. It was a success. As Milk and Lilith walk into the alley, Weiss internally reviews his performance. He won because he moved before the enemy, just as he was taught, knowing he'd have lost otherwise. Feeling proud of his flawless execution, he looks up at his teacher, thinking to himself, full points. Though Weiss is pleased with himself, Milk Sensei is a harsh critic. She looks at him, arms crossed, and despite his success, give him a mere 70 out of 100 points. Milk explains her reasoning. If it were her, she would have taken a more proactive approach and cut off one of their arms right inside the Adventurers Guild. Lilith, however, is full of praise, giving him a 200 and cheering for her master. Lilith then asks why they suddenly disappeared, telling them it was super scary. Milk just laughs it off with a casual apology, much to Weiss's annoyance. As they talk, Weiss notices a small, dark stain on Lilith's cuff. He asks if it's blood, but she just smiles sweetly and tells him it's his imagination. Her expression, however, is unervingly blank. The scene cuts to a bloody aftermath inside a tavern. An article headline raises a question. Were more than 20 members of a notorious band of thieves arrested? The story then shifts to a peaceful garden gazebo where a mysterious and elegant young woman with long, light-colored hair is reading. She's reading a newspaper article about the incident. It reports that the notorious Boudin brothers were arrested, incidentally with the cooperation of Weiss Vincent, whose picture is featured prominently. The mysterious woman looks up from the paper, a thoughtful, intrigued look on her face. That Weiss, she murmurs, his recent actions clearly having captured her attention. The chapter concludes back at the Vincent estate, with Weiss and his now smiling maid, Lilith, ready to face another day. The story is to be continued. 1 year and 6 months have passed since Weiss's training began. Through relentless effort, he has achieved overwhelming growth, his presence now radiating power. His days were filled with intense, grueling training under his tutor, Milk. He would constantly push himself to the point of running out of stamina and passing out from complete mana exhaustion. However, those days are now a thing of the past. Weiss has grown so much stronger that such displays of weakness no longer happen. He can now shatter a thick log with a single, effortless punch. His abilities have developed in other ways, too. He can now detect the presence of enemies through walls and can clearly feel the flow of mana throughout his body. He is well aware that he has grown considerably. While studying, his butler Zevis checks in on him, asking if his magic training is proceeding smoothly. Weiss, with a calm demeanor, assures him that it's going well. Weiss internally admits that while he says it's going well, he's having a hard time with Milk Sensei's Spartan training, which involves mastering the 4 basic elements of magic: earth, wind, fire, and water. He proudly demonstrates his progress to Zevis, skillfully manipulating all 4 elements at once. The butler is left speechless with astonishment. Despite his success, Weiss can't help but think to himself that his teacher, Milk, is a demon, even more ruthless than the Boudin brothers he once captured. Zevis, observing from the side, understands why Milk is pushing the young master so hard. He believes it's precisely because Weiss's talent is so far beyond ordinary. Zevis explains to the other maids that magic is typically limited to 1 element per person. Even a top-tier S-rank adventurer like Milk can only handle 2. Weiss, however, can use all 4, making his talent exceptionally rare. He reflects on Weiss's past, admitting he was once surprised by the boy's carelessness and laziness. He never expected him to work so diligently and reach such an incredible level. Looking at his young master with immense pride, Zevis thinks to himself, "You've truly become admirable, Weiss-sama." Zevis's thoughts drift back to the incident that revealed Weiss's true progress. It was a moment when Weiss was crying, begging for forgiveness, and pleading not to be hit. The scene unfolds in the garden, where Weiss is on his knees. His loyal maid, Lilith, stands protectively in front of him, begging Milk to stop striking him with a wooden sword. Milk, with an intense gaze, ignores the plea. She questions Weiss, asking if he's been practicing magic behind her back. With a commanding tone, she tells him to show her what he's been hiding. Finding his resolve, Weiss rises to his feet. A dark, powerful aura begins to emanate from his hands as he prepares to reveal the secret magic he has been developing. As Weiss demonstrates his power, Milk and Lilith are stunned. They realize he can use not only the 4 basic elements, but also the special, opposing elements of light and dark. Weiss looks at them with a slight smile, explaining that he kept this a secret because he wanted to show them after he had perfected the technique, admitting that it's still incomplete. He declares that since they are both watching him now, he feels he can finally complete it. This is his original magic, born from combining both light and dark. As he levitates, surrounded by a swirling vortex of light and shadow, he proclaims that this incredible power is the result of 1.5 years' worth of tireless effort, leaving his 2 spectators in utter awe. The scene then shifts to the present day. A grand party is being held at the Vincent family mansion, filled with nobles from all around. Weiss attends the party with Lilith by his side. He lets out a large yawn, which doesn't go unnoticed. Lilith asks if it's because he stayed up late, but he knows it's lingering fatigue from the immense magical effort he exerted the day before. The narration recaps that after that intense confrontation in the garden, Weiss's original magic was, in fact, successfully completed. His original magic, Dark Heal, was a fusion of 2 opposing forces, the light elements healing light and the dark elements curse poison magic, Dark Haze. This incredible technique created an area that simultaneously healed all allies while inflicting continuous curse damage on enemies. However, successfully completing it for the first time came at a steep price. The mana consumption was so astronomical that it left him completely drained and caused him to collapse on the spot. Back at the party, Weiss reflects that he still needs to increase his mana capacity. Seeing his exhaustion, Lilith misinterprets the cause and cheerfully declares she's going to grab some strong booze to wake him up. Before Weiss can even react, Lilith dashes off into the crowd with a surprising burst of speed. Weiss watches in disbelief, noting her incredibly agile movements. She weaves through the party guests with the speed and grace of an assassin. He vaguely recalls a rumor from the game's backstory about hidden guards within the Vincent family. Just then, a gentle voice calls his name, breaking his train of thought. He turns to see an incredibly beautiful girl with long, flowing blonde hair looking at him. Her elegant presence immediately sets her apart from the crowd. Weiss's mind races as he instantly recognizes her. His internal monologue is one of pure panic as he identifies her as Cynthia, the daughter of Countess Violetta. He takes in her features, her beautiful, shimmering hair and her striking red eyes. There's no doubt in his mind who she is. She is Cynthia Violetta, the main heroine of the game, noblesse oblige. With a sly, knowing smile, she greets him, "Long time no see, Weiss." Cynthia asks him what's wrong, her voice dripping with mockery. She comments that he has a terrible look on his face, as if he just crushed a goblin and turned it into a muddy soup. Her words trigger a flood of memories from the game. Weiss recalls that as the villain, he was hated by every single character. His hand begins to tremble as he remembers that among all of them, Cynthia was the one who hated him the most. The terrifying truth crashes down on him. The very person who caused his original death, leaving his body riddled with holes, was none other than Cynthia herself. He realizes he is face to face with his executioner. He berates himself for being here. As a member of the Vincent family, he was obligated to show his face, but he never imagined he would run into Cynthia before even enrolling at the academy. He desperately tries to calm his spiraling panic, telling himself that it's still before the academy enrollment. He hasn't done anything to earn Cynthia's hatred yet, but then a horrifying memory surfaces. It's a memory belonging to the previous Weiss. The details are hazy, and he struggles to remember what the original villain did to her. Cynthia, meanwhile, looks at his panicked expression with confusion. The fragmented memory sharpens into a vivid, terrible scene. The original Weiss cornering a terrified Cynthia, clamping a hand over her mouth as he held a weapon. The memory continues, showing Cynthia confronting the original Weiss, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and defiance. In the memory, Cynthia furiously accuses the original Weiss of using his noble title to forcefully invite her to his room and attempting to taint her with his filthy hands, calling him what he was, a trash noble. The realization hits the current Weiss like a physical blow. It's the worst possible scenario. The original Weiss had already committed a vile act, meaning Cynthia already loathes him so much he feels he could die from it on the spot. Faced with her palpable hatred, Weiss makes a split-second decision. He bows deeply before her, offering a sincere and public apology. He declares that the act was unworthy of a noble and that it was all his fault, leaving the surrounding guests speechless. Weiss doesn't expect forgiveness. However, he's banking on his game knowledge. Cynthia, for all her fierceness, is not so cruel as to condemn someone who is genuinely reflecting on their actions. He can only hope this holds true. He peeks up and sees that Cynthia's expression has softened. It seems she has calmed down a bit. He thinks that maybe, just maybe, this unexpected apology will lower the chances of his eventual downfall. Weiss feels a sense of relief. He reflects that while he once admired the character of Cynthia in the game, his only goal now is to survive. He decides this is the most he can do for now and plans to find the right moment to leave the party. He resigns himself to his fate. He and Cynthia are like light and darkness. Their paths are not meant to cross. As the villain, he must stay away from the heroine. He feels he has no choice but to withdraw. Just like Icarus, who flew too close to the sun, a disgraced noble like him approaching a well-bred lady like Cynthia can only lead to ruin. He braces himself to leave, but just as he's about to turn away, his hand is suddenly grabbed. To his utter shock, it's Cynthia who has taken his hand, holding it firmly. They both stand frozen for a moment, her expression as surprised as his own, as if she acted on an impulse she didn't quite understand herself, leaving Weiss utterly bewildered by the unexpected turn of events. From a distance, Lilith finally returns, booze in hand, only to see Cynthia leading Weiss away. She watches in confusion, calling out his name, Weiss Vincent. Still holding his arm, Cynthia looks at Weiss with a captivating gaze and asks, "If you don't mind, would you like to dance with me?" Lilith is utterly shocked, shouting, "Huh," from behind them as they head to the dance floor. The second chapter of the story comes to a close. The scene shifts to a later date. Weiss and Cynthia are having a seemingly pleasant tea time in a garden gazebo. Weiss makes small talk, noting the lovely weather and the chirping of the birds. Despite the calm exterior, Weiss is internally bewildered, asking himself over and over why. Why is Cynthia at my place? His mind flashes back to the night of the party, explaining that the events leading to this moment started when he met the main heroine, Cynthia, and she unexpectedly invited him for a formal dance. As they danced, Cynthia looked at a puzzled Weiss and told him with a confident smile that she actually knew about the fact that he had changed. Weiss pieces it together. It seems Cynthia had heard rumors among the nobles about his daily, intense training in preparation for entering the academy. During the dance, she brought up the past incident, pointedly asking him about his claim of not remembering much about that day. Weiss stammers a "why yes," admitting he doesn't know how to properly apologize for the attempted assault his former self committed. In a swift motion, Cynthia suddenly dips him, catching him completely off guard. In a dramatic dance pose, she holds him close, their faces just inches apart, leaving him flustered and breathless. Leaning in even closer, she whispers a question that sends his mind reeling. "What about me? Did you also forget that you said you liked me?" Just as Weiss is about to short-circuit from her question, the music ends and applause fills the hall, breaking the intense moment. Cynthia pulls away, simply saying, "Well then, see you again," and walks off. Weiss is left standing there, stunned, feeling as though she had just stolen his heart and left it behind. The story then introduces a new key player in this unfolding drama. Weiss's father, Ajito Vincent, a doting and somewhat eccentric-looking nobleman. Returning to the events after the party, Weiss is shown at his mansion, having just received a letter from his father, Ajito. The contents of the letter send Weiss into a full-blown panic. His father has arranged a dinner party with Cynthia at their home, and she is scheduled to arrive today. He looks out the window to see her carriage is already outside. As Lilith discovers yet another letter from his father, Weiss gets a terrible feeling. He quickly orders his staff to prepare to welcome their unexpected, high-profile guest. And that brings the story back to the present, with Weiss and Cynthia in the gazebo. The flashback ends with Weiss silently cursing his damned old man for orchestrating this entire situation without his knowledge. Weiss is deeply conflicted. As a fan of the game, he's honestly happy to be having tea with Cynthia. But he knows he can't get close to her because she was originally supposed to end up with the game's true protagonist, Alan. He visualizes his greatest fear. If he gets close to her, he will change the future, effectively stealing the heroine away from Alan and preventing their fated meeting. The terror of this possibility consumes him. If the future gets changed, his knowledge of the game's scenario becomes useless. Taking the main heroine away from the protagonist would completely ruin the story he knows and relies on for survival. As Cynthia calls his name, he's trapped in a desperate mental calculation. He has to maintain a perfect distance from her. It will be bad if he's disliked, leading to his death flag, but it's equally bad if he's liked, which would derail the entire plot. Seeing him struggle to find the right words, Cynthia presses the matter further, reminding him of another piece of their shared past. "You once said you fell in love with me at first sight," she says, her gaze direct. "Did you also forget about that?" She admits that at the time, his confession was too sudden and came off as arrogant, which left her dissatisfied. But she continues, her tone shifting as she considers his recent behavior. "If you're going to show such a sincere apology now, Leaning forward with a flirtatious smile, Cynthia drops a bombshell. Then even I wouldn't be opposed to it, you know, she suggests, heavily implying she would accept his feelings if he confessed again. Weiss is left completely speechless, staring down at his teacup as he tries to process the complete and utter derailment of his plans. His mind is screaming in pure, unadulterated terror. This is the exact opposite of what he wanted to happen. He panics, realizing this happened the very moment he thought it would be bad if she liked him. He remembers from the game that Cynthia, despite her noble appearance, has a soft side and falls in love with the protagonist at an abnormally fast speed. This knowledge only makes things worse. He knows Cynthia is soft-hearted, but once she falls in love, she becomes incredibly devoted. He concludes that he has to somehow lower her affection for him immediately. But his efforts are in vain. As he sits there quietly, Cynthia misinterprets his silence as shyness, which she finds cute. To his horror, he can practically see her favorability rating rising on its own. Just then, Lilith appears to offer a refill of tea, startling the already on-edge Weiss and causing him to let out a pathetic squeal. Mortified by the sound he just made, Weiss quickly composes himself, thinking that this might actually be a blessing in disguise. Surely, if she hears such a pathetic moan, her feelings will cool down. His plan backfires spectacularly. Cynthia simply mumbles about how cute he is, and her affection meter ticks even higher. Lilith watches this, realizing Cynthia is a lost cause and that she needs to intervene quickly. Cynthia then gets to the main topic. She states that the dinner party is meant to be their engagement introduction, and after seeing how much he's changed, she has decided to agree to it. The news is so shocking, Weiss almost chokes on his tea. The story flashes to Weiss's father, Ajito Vincent, talking with his man. He muses that his son is troublesome, handsome like him, but too shy when it comes to romance. Ajito proudly recounts that when he saw Weiss finally get a chance to dance with the famous lady Cynthia, he took immediate action and settled the matter of their engagement without a moment's hesitation. When his subordinate asks if he got his son's approval, Ajito laughs it off while playing in a sandbox, claiming he's the father and can tell what his son wants just by looking at him. His men can only look on as their boss acts like a child. The scene returns to the present, with Weiss and Lilith seeing Cynthia off as her carriage departs from the mansion. The moment Cynthia is out of sight, Weiss's composure shatters completely. He erupts in a furious scream. "The hell do you mean by engagement? D-E-E." He flashes back to the moment he and Lilith read the letter from his father, his face contorted in a crazed expression of disbelief. He reflects on the situation. While arranged marriages are common, this isn't for political gain. His father, who barely appeared in the original game, made this arrangement purely out of misguided belief that it would make his son happy. And in that moment, Weiss finally understands. His father is the epitome of an excessively indulgent parent. He realizes that this is the biggest reason why the original Weiss turned into such a spoiled, villainous character. As this earth-shattering realization sinks in, he looks over and sees Lilith standing there, her expression one of utter devastation. Tears streaming down her face, Lilith misunderstands the entire situation. Believing she is about to be replaced, she tearfully begs him, "Please, be happy with Violetta-sama." Before Weiss can say a word to correct her, Lilith turns and flees, running away with incredible speed. Just as he's about to go after her, Milk appears and stops him. With a stern look, she gives him his training quota for the day. Chase Lilith. Milk scolds him, asking if he knows why Lilith was crying. The man she supported for a year and a half was suddenly snatched away. Milk states that even though the engagement wasn't his fault, she won't let him ignore the fact that Lilith is heartbroken. She gives him a final, menacing order: return to the mansion with Lilith, or face death as punishment. Without hesitation, Weiss agrees and sprints off after his distraught maid. As he runs, Weiss thinks about how much he owes Lilith. She has always been by his side, and he knows there's no way she wouldn't be shocked and hurt by the sudden news of an engagement. He runs with all his might, acknowledging that if Lilith hadn't been there to support him, he would have remained his lazy, worthless self. He screams for her to wait, yelling that the only reason he ever managed to do his best was because of her. But she cries for him to leave her alone, and Weiss is stunned to find that even at full speed, he can't catch up to her. The chase leads them into the forest training grounds. He begs her to just listen, but Lilith tearfully shouts back that it can't be helped since she's just a maid, after all. From the mansion entrance, Milk watches sternly as the high-speed chase unfolds. As Lilith leaps nimbly through the trees, Weiss finally screams the truth at her. The engagement was something his father decided on his own, and not something he wanted. He keeps shouting, asking if she knows about the servant system at the Noblesse Magic Academy. He explains that, as an exception, only high-ranking nobles are allowed to be assigned one servant. Finally, he declares his true intention. I plan to take you with me. It's because I trust you the most. His words finally make Lilith stop in her tracks. With tears in her eyes, Lilith slowly processes his words. He trusts her the most. Her mind begins to race, trying to understand what he truly means. Her heartbreak begins to morph into a complete misunderstanding. She looks back at the panting Weiss and thinks, does this mean that you are seeking me, Weiss-sama, not as a servant, but as something more? With a newfound, strange determination, she turns to him and asks, you will continue to chase after me forever, won't you? Before taking off again, leaving a confused Weiss to chase her down a long flight of stairs. Weiss is at his absolute limit, about to pass out. But seeing her question as a challenge, he musters his last ounce of strength and yells back, agreeing to her bizarre condition without understanding it. Lilith, now fully convinced his declaration of trust was a confession of love, turns to him with a beaming, blush-filled smile. She happily misinterprets her new role, declaring herself to be Weiss-sama's mistress from now on. Having pushed himself far beyond his limits, Weiss's consciousness finally gives out. He collapses right at the edge of a cliff, much to Lilith's surprise. Without a second thought, Lilith shouts his name and dives off the cliff after him as he tumbles over the edge. The two of them fall through the air, down towards the river flowing through the deep canyon below. As they fall, she embraces him. She tells him to be at ease and promises to do her best, vowing to never tell anyone about the relationship they've just entered into. Barely conscious, Weiss hears her whisper, "It's a secret love, isn't it?" He's too exhausted to register the words or correct her massive misunderstanding. They plunge into the water below. The narration concludes that in a single day, Weiss got engaged to the heroine Cynthia and became involved in a secret affair with his maid, Lilith. The scene suddenly shifts to a rustic village. Here we see the original game's protagonist, Alan, who has just finished his own training by carving a massive opening into a rock formation. The scene opens with Weiss's inner monologue, where he reflects on the recent turn of events. He somehow got engaged to Cynthia and even became secret lovers with Lilith. Looking at the girls training in the distance, Weiss can't help but feel that the whole situation is a ridiculous mess. He wryly thanks his father for making everything so complicated. Their instructor, Milk, steps in, holding a wooden practice sword. She announces that the basic training is over and it's time to move on to practical sparring. Milk asks if either Cynthia or Lilith have ever sparred before. Cynthia confidently replies, "Of course I have." Lilith also chimes in with an enthusiastic, "Yes, I have," leaving Weiss looking shocked. Weiss reflects on the complicated situation, noting that both Lilith and Cynthia have now joined his training sessions. He continues his thoughts, recalling that they both asked Milk Sensei to train them in preparation for an entrance test that is a few months away. Weiss analyzes their motivations. He knows Cynthia already has more than enough ability to pass the test with ease. As for Lilith, he originally planned for her to be his attendant, so she didn't even need to take the test in the first place. Returning to the present, Weiss concludes that technically, neither of them needed any training. He muses that if Cynthia, who's already guaranteed to pass, puts in even more effort, she might become even more formidable than in the original story. Just then, Milk calls out his name, snapping him out of his thoughts. Milk announces the first sparring match, Weiss versus Cynthia. While Lilith encourages Cynthia to do her best, Weiss feels embarrassed by the attention, especially when teased about being captivated by his fiancée. As they face each other, Milk tells them she trusts they understand to start without her saying begin. Weiss looks back, confused by the sudden instruction. Before Weiss can even finish asking what she means, Cynthia lunges forward, closing the distance in an instant. Weiss is caught completely off guard by her sudden attack. Their wooden swords clash with immense force, creating a shockwave. From a distance, the others watch as Weiss grits his teeth, stunned by the power behind Cynthia's opening move. With a smirk, Milk reminds Weiss of a crucial lesson she taught him. Cynthia chimes in, reinforcing the point. The most important thing in a fight is the first move. Suddenly, Cynthia vanishes from his sight. Startled, Weiss quickly readies his sword, bracing for an attack from any direction. Weiss's eye glows with a dark energy as he activates his dark eye ability. He focuses intently, anticipating Cynthia's next move as she dashes across the field. Cynthia reappears, swinging her sword down, but Weiss is ready for her. He swiftly brings his own sword up to block her strike. As they clash, Weiss begins to explain Cynthia's specialty, ice magic. He elaborates that her signature move is to infuse her legs with magic, allowing her to move at high speed as if she's skating on ice. This lets her attack from her opponent's blind spots, but Weiss, using his dark eye, perfectly predicts her movement. Having read her trajectory, Weiss pivots and lands a light bonk on Cynthia's head with his wooden sword, completely neutralizing her high-speed assault. Cynthia freezes, flustered and embarrassed by the hit, letting out a cry of frustration. Weiss panics, claiming he only meant to give her a light tap, while Milk calmly points out that it turned into a counterattack because of Cynthia's own high speed. Visibly frustrated, Cynthia complains that this is the first time her attack has ever been dodged so easily. To soothe the blow, Lilith performs a cute shine heel magic on Cynthia's head. Milk approaches Weiss, intrigued. She asks him how he was able to read Cynthia's high-speed movement, admitting that she was quite fast. She muses aloud, wondering if it was just a fluke. Before Weiss can answer, Milk announces the next match to test his skills further. She turns to Lilith and declares that she will be Weiss's next opponent. Weiss is taken aback, questioning if he really has to fight again, this time against Lilith. He tries to complain about being tired, but Milk curtly tells him to stop whining. Lilith, ever polite, simply bows and says she looks forward to their match, readying her stance. As they prepare to fight, Weiss has a moment of internal conflict. He initially thinks there's no way he can seriously spar with Lilith, who is just a maid. But a flash of memories showing her performing extraordinary, unmaid-like actions time and time again forces him to reconsider the quiet girl standing before him. Continuing his inner monologue, Weiss stands ready with his sword, a look of intense focus on his face. He has a gut feeling that if he lets his guard down against Lilith for even a second, he will die. Just as he predicted, Lilith unleashes a flurry of high-speed movements, dashing across the field with incredible agility, leaving trails of dust in her wake. Weiss grits his teeth, his eyes wide with a mix of shock and concentration as he tries to keep up with Lilith's blurred, lightning-fast assault. The sparring match intensifies. Weiss is pushed onto the defensive, grunting as he barely manages to parry and block Lilith's relentless and powerful sword strikes that come at him from all angles. Watching from the sidelines, Milk calmly remarks, "Oh, so you can see it, huh?" Cynthia looks on in disbelief, realizing that Weiss seeing through her own high-speed movements earlier wasn't just a fluke. Weiss, sweating and clenching his jaw, confirms that he can indeed see Lilith's movements. Weiss is reeling internally. He curses, wondering what is going on. He never imagined Lilith would be this strong, especially since in the original game story, she was just a minor attendant with barely any screen time. His internal analysis continues. He notes that although Lilith has only just started learning magic, her speed is far superior to his own. On top of that, she clearly has a deep knowledge of swordsmanship. A dark, swirling aura of magic manifests above Weiss as he comes to a grave realization. Clutching his head in frustration, he admits to himself that if he doesn't take this fight seriously, he is going to lose. Deciding to go all out, Weiss unleashes his trump card. He casts his original magic, Dark Heel, creating a massive, intricate magic circle on the ground that traps Lilith within its bounds. Caught within the circle, Lilith stops in her tracks, surprised. She immediately recognizes the technique, exclaiming that this is Weiss-sama's original magic. Lilith's expression becomes serious as she quickly analyzes the spell's properties. She understands that it's a skill that continuously deals curse damage to enemies inside the circle while healing allies. Lilith knows she has to get out of the circle quickly, but then she spots an opening. To cast this powerful magic with both hands, Weiss has temporarily let go of his wooden sword, leaving him defenseless. With Weiss unarmed and seemingly vulnerable in the center of the circle, Lilith sees a golden opportunity to strike. Lilith quickly weighs her options. As a close combat specialist, escaping the circle would just leave her vulnerable to Weiss's long-range magic. Deciding this is her only chance, she seizes the opening and dashes towards him. However, a dark smirk spreads across Weiss's face. He had anticipated this. Lilith's sword swings towards Weiss, but it clangs loudly against an invisible, web-like barrier that suddenly appears, stopping her attack completely. She looks on in shock as she is thrown back. Her sword having bounced off, Lilith is stunned. Weiss, crouching behind his defense, comments with satisfaction, "Good. No holding back." He then reveals the name of his technique, Absolute Barrier, an original magic combining the permanence of dark magic with the protection of light magic. Weiss continues his explanation, revealing that on top of the barrier, he's been using another magic all this time, his Dark Eye. He boasts that by making full use of his Dark Eye to predict her moves and his Absolute Barrier to defend, he can fend off her attacks as long as his mana holds out, even if his body can't match her speed. Watching Lilith struggle against the perfect defense, Milk calmly asks, "So, what will you do, Lilith?" "Is that all?" Lilith can only sweat, feeling the draining effects of the Dark Heel circle. Suddenly, Cynthia cries out, "Weiss, cancel the magic quickly." Weiss looks over, confused, only to see Lilith swaying on her feet, looking dizzy and completely drained. Before Weiss can react, Lilith collapses onto the ground with a heavy thump, utterly exhausted by the spell. Weiss calls out her name in alarm. The sparring match concludes. Lilith, now resting against a tree with the others, quietly admits her complete defeat to Weiss-sama. Weiss approaches and asks if she's all right. Milk assures him that she's given Lilith an advanced potion and she'll be fine. While Cynthia expresses her shock at Lilith's swift defeat, Milk turns to Weiss, more importantly wanting to know what kind of magic he just used. Weiss explains the terrifying effects of his Dark Heel. When an opponent enters the circle, they are inflicted with a multitude of debuffs: reduced movement and attack speed, lowered physical and magical defense, mana drain, reduced vitality and vigor, and physical weakening. He believes Lilith collapsed so quickly due to her relatively small mana reserve being drained. With a sinister and triumphant grin, Weiss reveals the other, more terrifying aspect of his magic. He is the exact opposite of his opponent. He can absorb all the stats stolen from the enemy and add them to his own, strengthening himself in the process. Weiss continues his explanation with a smile, adding that the more enemies are in the magic circle, the stronger he becomes. He also mentions that if he recognizes someone as an ally, he can grant them the same enhancements. Milk, Cynthia, and Lilith are left utterly speechless. Seeing their shocked, pale faces, Weiss has a moment of internal panic. He suddenly realizes that this might be the perfect timing to say that line. He internally celebrates, thinking this is his chance to say the ultimate line that everyone who gets reincarnated into another world dreams of saying. He's always wanted to say it, and he thinks it should be okay to do it now. But before he can deliver his cool line, he's interrupted by Milk. Radiating a dark, fiery aura of excitement, she says, "Duel me, Weiss." Weiss looks back, startled, wondering if he did something wrong again. With a menacing grin and cracking her knuckles, Milk declares that it's been a long time since she's felt this fired up. She tells Weiss that she'll have him take responsibility and use his newfound power to calm her down. Weiss can only look on in terror. The scene changes to show the aftermath of their duel, a large crater with Weiss's legs sticking out of it. And so, with this, Cynthia and Lilith officially join the intense training. A montage shows the days and months flying by. The group endured Milk Sensei's Spartan training every day, while the complicated romantic misunderstandings between Weiss, Cynthia, and Lilith remained unresolved. Finally, the day of the exam arrives. The group, led by a guard, walks through the massive gates of a grand academy, ready to face the test. A title card announces the next arc, the Noblesse Magic Academy entrance test. It ominously shows Weiss and the game's original protagonist, Alan, with the text declaring that the time for their paths to finally cross has come. Bukkowa, exact duplicate. The scene provides an overview of the Noblesse Magic Academy, described as the kingdom's most prestigious educational institution with the largest campus in the world. As the group walks through the courtyard, they overhear someone yelling at a loiterer. An aggressive brute of a man confronts a smaller boy, accusing him of staring. The boy stammers that he wasn't. He just thought the man was large. The brute grabs him threateningly, but this commotion catches Weiss's attention, who cracks his knuckles with a cold glare. After the bully is sent flying with a pained shout, the crowd starts to murmur. They wonder who intervened, and then a dark silhouette of Weiss appears as people recognize him. Huh. Isn't that the infamous abusive noble? Weiss. As the crowd gossips, they notice the two beautiful women with him. They figure the rumors of his engagement to Lady Cynthia from the house of Violetta must be true and wonder who the other beauty, Lilith, is. The brute who is harassing the boy looks back in terror, finally recognizing the person who disciplined him as the notorious villainous noble. Weiss Vincent Sama. The bully immediately prostrates himself, begging for forgiveness and pleading not to be abused. Weiss coldly tells him to get lost. As the man scrambles away, Weiss reflects internally that his bad reputation is still going strong. Weiss muses that 2 years have passed since he began his training to change his fate. He recommits to his goal of being as friendly as possible to gradually change people's negative perception of him. The boy Weiss saved thanks him profusely. In an internal monologue, Weiss notes that they've finally arrived at the entrance test, and on this day he must defeat a certain man, the very man standing before him. The black-haired boy, the protagonist of the original game, extends a hand and introduces himself with a friendly, unassuming smile. "I'm Alan." Alan recognizes Weiss and cheerfully wishes him luck, saying, "Let's do our best today, Weiss." Weiss maintains a stoic, unreadable expression, a stark contrast to Alan's bright demeanor. Alan extends his hand for a handshake, hoping they both make it through the exam. Weiss looks down at the offered hand, a cold look in his eyes, creating a moment of tension. Before Weiss can respond to the handshake, a loud bell rings, startling Alan. A man in a butler uniform announces that the exam is about to begin. Lilith and Cynthia remind Weiss that the warning bell has rung and the exam is starting. On the other side, Alan's companion urges him to hurry as well, pulling him away. As they part ways, Alan's friend turns to Weiss and shyly thanks him for helping Alan. A text box introduces her as Alan's childhood friend, Cheryl Elias. As Alan and Cheryl hurry off, Weiss is left with a clenched fist and a dark expression. He's overcome by a strange, intense feeling he can't quite identify. In the quiet moment after their encounter, Weiss reflects on his own actions. He realizes that just now, he hesitated to reach for Alan's extended hand. He doesn't understand why, but even the simple act of talking to Alan filled him with an unbearable sense of unease. As the students sit for the written portion of the exam, Weiss thinks about his original plan. He doesn't dislike Alan personally. While his goal for today is to defeat him in the exam, he had planned to remain on friendly terms afterward, while still keeping a safe distance. An instructor announces the practical combat test is next and hands out old, hand-me-down uniforms. Yet, as Weiss puts on the uniform, his heart begins to throb with a restless, uneasy feeling that he can't suppress. Weiss, flanked by Cynthia and Lilith, now all clad in their combat uniforms, look ready for battle. They strike an imposing figure as they head towards the arena. As they walk, Weiss spots Alan in the crowd. Suddenly, the strange feeling intensifies into a singular, powerful thought. I want to crush him. The dark urge spirals out of control. Weiss looks down at the sea of other examinees and realizes it's not just Alan. A manic look crosses his face as he thinks, no, not just him. I want to crush them all. Weiss clutches his head, trying to fight back the dark impulse, wondering what's wrong with him. An instructor explains the rules for the combat test. Win by knocking the opponent out of the ring or forcing a surrender. He adds that he'll step in if things get too dangerous. Meanwhile, some of the other students provide a moment of levity. Two large boys complain about the hand-me-down uniforms being too small and smelly. The instructor shouts back that it's too late to complain and questions how they can be so huge at only 15. Alan encourages the large student, telling him to tough it out to get a new uniform. Nearby, Lilith is impressed they have uniforms for everyone, while Cynthia notes that it already makes her feel like they've enrolled. A mysterious woman with white hair and a smug smile appears, telling them that's right. She cryptically adds that having uniforms prepared just shows how hellish life is after entering the academy, leaving Lilith and Cynthia flustered and confused. The woman explains why there are so many spare uniforms. Noblesse Academy is a brutal institution where those who can't keep up are expelled on the spot. The lessons are so intense that some don't survive, and many discard their uniforms upon leaving, never wanting to be reminded of their time there. Weiss listens to the explanation with a cold expression. He reflects that, despite the grim reputation, getting into the academy isn't actually that difficult. He recalls that even his former, lazy self from the original game managed to pass. The mood shifts as rain begins to fall. Weiss stands alone in the vast arena, waiting for his name to be called, the dripping rain adding to the tension. Finally, the announcer calls out the combatants for the next match. Examinee number 909, Weiss Vincent. And a dramatic close-up frames the two opponents. Rain soaks their hair as they stare each other down. Weiss with a cold, intense glare and Alan with a look of determined surprise. The announcer complains to an instructor about the heavy downpour. The instructor orders all examinees not currently in a match to move to the spectator seats for shelter, leaving the combatants in the rain-soaked arena. In the stands, the crowd murmurs in amazement, realizing the rain isn't hitting them, protected by a magic barrier. Down below, Alan tells Weiss he never thought they'd face each other and suggests they make it a good fight, while his friend cheers him on. Cynthia and Lilith cheer, "Do your best, Weiss-sama," from the stands. Weiss remains silent and focused as the instructor bellows, "Now, then, let the mock battle begin." A dynamic full-page spread captures the intensity and chaos of battle, symbolizing the fierce clash that is about to unfold in the arena. As the match begins, Weiss doesn't hesitate. He immediately leaps into the air and stomps down, unleashing his signature magic, Dark Heel, which spreads across the arena floor in an instant. Alan is instantly caught by the spell, crying out in agony as the dark energy envelopes him. From the stands, Cynthia and Lilith watch with shocked expressions, horrified by the immediate and powerful attack. One of the instructors screams in confusion, wondering what just happened. Weiss, however, turns his back on his writhing opponent, thinking to himself, "Damn it, as I thought, it's no good." Enveloped in a dark aura and sporting a manic grin, Weiss struggles with his inner demons. He can't suppress the burning urge to crush Alan. Yet he's confused why nothing else is happening, questioning the source of this feeling. Suddenly, a student in the crowd grabs his friend, moaning that the sensation feels incredibly good. It seems the dark, corrupting energy from Weiss's spell is spreading, and its source is the overwhelmed Alan at the center of the arena. As Alan collapses, Weiss is horrified by his own actions, his inner villain seemingly taking control and baring its fangs. He wonders if this overwhelming, dark impulse is his fault. The title card for Chapter 7, The Results of Reformation, appears. From the stands, Milk watches the chaos unfold with a smirk, thinking to herself, guess I'll step in and lend a hand. The scene shifts to after the entrance exams. In a grand office, a man with a large mustache sits at the head of a table and asks two others, "So, what exactly did you two do to Weiss?" The two individuals being questioned are formally introduced. Zevis Aldine, the loyal butler of the Vincent family, and Milk A. Vitas, the formidable S-rank adventurer. The man continues his questioning, stating that he never would have thought that the boy, Weiss Vincent, would go on to break all previous records in every single one of the Academy's exams. A flashback shows a bloodied but triumphant Weiss. The man is introduced as Gills, the headmaster of Noblesse Magic Academy. He directly asks Milk and Zevis, who raised Weiss, what they think of the boy and his dangerously powerful abilities. Before they can respond, another instructor with a prominent facial scar steps forward, asking the headmaster if he may have a word. Milk and Zevis remain silent. The instructor, introduced as Darius, argues that while Weiss's scores were indeed the highest in Academy history, he didn't technically break any records. He points out that Weiss merely tied for first place with a female student from the previous year. Ignoring Darius's point, Headmaster Gills redirects the question to Milk and Zevis. Milk coolly replies that she did nothing special, only providing some basic training. Zevis concurs, adding that he just supported Weiss with meals. Zevis elaborates with a straight face that he gave Weiss lots of protein, listing off soy, dairy, and chicken tenders. Darius looks on, utterly confused by the bizarre explanation. Darius slams his fist on the table in fury, shouting, "Don't mess with us." He points out that Weiss mastered not only the 4 major attributes, but also light and dark creation magic, which is impossible to achieve through diet alone. Unfazed, Milk takes a large gulp from a wooden mug, casually stating she doesn't know what to tell him. Enraged by her nonchalance, Darius screams, "And why are you drinking right now?" Zevis explains that she seems to have brought the alcohol herself, as Milk promptly passes out drunk on the table. Darius is apoplectic, shouting about her disrespect in front of the headmaster. The headmaster tells Darius to calm down, noting that Milk has always been this way. His gaze softens as he looks at a wooden sword, reflecting that what happened was cruel to the other boy, Alan. The scene flashes back to the arena, where Cheryl is tending to a severely injured Alan. The headmaster gravely reflects that because of Weiss's overwhelming power, Alan nearly died. Darius angrily declares it's all Weiss's fault, arguing that Alan is an exceptionally talented and trained student. He yells at the passed-out Milk, accusing her of spouting nonsense. In the background, Weiss wears a smug, victorious grin. Milk peeks out from under the table with a sly, taunting grin. "Jealousy is unsightly, Darius," she says. "Are you just taking out on us because you lost in a serious match?" Darius can only grit his teeth in response. As the headmaster calls for order, Zevis calmly addresses him. He acknowledges the concerns about Weiss-sama's enrollment, but asks the headmaster to rest assured. Zevis confidently declares that Weiss-sama has changed and would never use his power against the weak, showing a flashback to Weiss intervening against the bully at the academy entrance. Zevis continues his heartfelt defense, explaining that rather than being consumed by his immense power, Weiss now pushes himself with genuine effort to become a strong and courageous man. The scene shifts to show Weiss, Cynthia, and Lilith proudly holding their acceptance letters. The trio celebrates their success. Lilith cheers happily while Cynthia gives a confident smile, and Weiss looks at his acceptance letter with a sense of quiet accomplishment. The scene transitions to the first day of class. An instructor stands at the podium and, first of all, congratulates the new students on their enrollment into Noblesse Magic Academy. The instructor introduces herself to the class. Chloe will be in charge of this class, she states. I look forward to teaching you all. Chloe's gaze sweeps over the new students. A montage shows the faces of the key players in the classroom. A determined Lilith, a serious Alan, the stoic instructor Chloe, a surprised large student, and a confident Weiss. A close-up of Alan's determined face is shown as Weiss continues his internal monologue. Weiss reflects on the events of the entrance exam, recalling that on that day, he successfully defeated Alan. He remembers being completely consumed by his dark, villainous emotions, nearly beating Alan to death. But no matter how many times he knocked Alan down, the boy just kept getting back up. And each time Alan rose, he grew even stronger. Weiss admits that although he won by a landslide in the end, it took far longer to defeat Alan than he had ever expected. Damn it, Weiss thinks, snapping his fingers in frustration. It felt like I was being shown firsthand what it truly means to be a protagonist. Suddenly, Alan and the other students cry out in surprise, noticing a strange light glowing from the back of their hands. Chloe, their instructor, calmly points up, ready to explain. A glowing emblem appears in Chloe's palm, displaying the number 1,000. 1,000 points, she says. That's the amount each of you has been granted. The students are confused, asking what these points are. Chloe adjusts her glasses and explains that these points are a measure of their standing that will follow them all the way until graduation. Chloe turns to the blackboard and writes 1,000. She states that right now, everyone in the class has 1,000 points, but then glances over at a nervous-looking Weiss. But Weiss Vincent, she continues, based on your test results, the amount you have been granted is 2,000. Weiss's own emblem glows, showing the double score, and the classroom erupts in shocked chatter. The students are in an uproar, demanding to know the meaning of the points. They argue that doubling Weiss's score seems excessively harsh on everyone else. Chloe simply adjusts her glasses and says with a smirk, rather than explaining everything with words, I think it'll be easier for you all to understand through experience. Weiss looks on, a sense of dread washing over him. With a commanding presence, Chloe gives her first order to the stun class. Everyone, grab a wooden sword and head to the training grounds. Once the students are assembled on the vast training grounds, Chloe announces the start of a combat test. She then delivers a chilling clarification. Earlier, I congratulated you all on your enrollment, but I never said I would see you through to graduation. She reveals the brutal truth of the academy system. You've probably guessed it by now. Any student whose points reach 0 will be expelled on the spot. One of the students gasps in horror at the revelation. With a cold, unwavering gaze, Chloe announces the nature of their first test. Right, today, let's have you all fight it out till someone's points hit 0. It's a battle royale, and their academic lives are on the line. The scene cuts away to a forest clearing, where Milk is drinking heavily, surrounded by defeated bandits. She sighs that ever since Weiss left for the academy, every day feels empty. A captive bandit begs for his life. An idea strikes her. Guess I'll kill some time by getting a teaching license at Noblesse Magic Academy, she thinks with a blush. Looking towards the school, she smiles. Looks like a storm is brewing.